Okay, hello and welcome. This is Travis McEwen, your instructor for CIS 236 Cisco Networking 1. So this video is going to be going over a little bit of Packet Tracer, what Packet Tracer is, how to use it, and then we're going to do a little bit of a walkthrough for one of your first assignments. So let's go ahead and get started. So on Canvas, underneath modules, let's take a look at one of your first packet tracers that we have. So first off, what is Packet Tracer? Packet Tracer is a network emulation tool. So it's a way that we can simulate running actual routers, switches, PCs, and other IoT Internet of Things devices in a little program. So everything that we are doing in there is going to be similar as to if we were actually working on the physical components themselves. Pretty cool grand scheme of things. So where do we get Packet Tracer? So Packet Tracer is available to all of you as if you were all registered for the Cisco Network Academy course, so on NetAcad, and which I did at the start of the quarter. So if you haven't been able to access NetAcad, please let me know sooner rather than later so that you can get access to this, because this is, again, where your book is and also where you get Packet Tracer. Both are required in order for you to do well in this course and complete your homework. So to grab Packet Tracer, once you've logged into NetAcad, you'll go up to Resources and then go down to Download Packet Tracer. From there, you'll scroll down and you'll find the version of Packet Tracer that you need to download. So whether it's for Windows, Ubuntu, or for a Mac, and we are going to be using the latest version of Packet Tracer 8.0.1, which is what we need to find. So download what you need. Once you do that, you can install it, and when you open up Packet Tracer, it will prompt you for a login information. This login information is the exact same as what your credentials are to log into Cisco's Network Academy, NetAcad. So log in. So here is Packet Tracer. So Packet Tracer has a lot of different tools that we can actually use. So I'm going to walk through a couple of the different things of how Packet Tracer kind of works, what we can do with it, go over a couple simple tips and tricks, and then we're going to walk through your very first homework assignment together to give you an idea of what to do. So to start with, we have our network devices, and down at the very bottom, this is kind of just a free design. Down at the very bottom left-hand corner, we have the different options of what we can kind of select. You have in the bottom left-hand column, you have a top row and a bottom row. This first top row that I have my mouse hovering over is your network devices. And then the bottom row is the different types of network devices that we can put into our workspace. So we have routers. And by selecting the routers, you can see just to the right of it, the different makes and models of Cisco routers that are available for us. We have switches, which are the different makes and models of some of the supported switches for Cisco. Then we also have hubs, wireless devices, and other types of components as well. If we look at end devices, we can take a look at, say, like desktop computers, laptops, servers, phones, tablets, TVs, smartphones, different things that we can kind of add in. Now, for right now, we're not going to get too in-depth into it, but I am going to show a couple of the different types of things that we can do. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to select network devices, routers, and I'm going to select a router that I know, which is the 2911. And so you'll click on it, and then click into your logical workspace. Now, if I also want to add a couple of switches as well, so I'll go down to switches, select a couple of the 2960s, and then I also want to add a couple of PCs as well, so I'll go to end devices, click on PC, and we'll add a couple of PCs as well. So now that I have my components, we need to cable them up and actually make them physically connected. Now, for doing that, again, in this bottom left-hand corner, we can see the different types of connections, which is represented by that orange lightning bolt. Now, we have a couple different options of how we can cable things up. We can automatically choose our own type of connection, which sometimes I do, but then we also have different types of cables that are represented by different icons. We have a console cable. This is also known as a rollover cable. What this cable does is it allows us to make a physical connection into, say, a switch or a router to allow us to physically manage and make changes to the actual device. So if I plug a console cable into this RS-232 port and connect it up to the switch, and you'll see that if I click on it, I'll have a large number of different ports that I can connect to. We have fast Ethernet, so that's similar to, say, like your typical cable that you get from, say, like a Comcast box. So that yellow or blue Ethernet cable. And then we have gigabit Ethernet, which is basically, for right now, we're just going to say roughly the same thing, but it's faster. And then we also have a console connection, which is what we're going to be plugging into. Now, if you wanted to take a look and see, okay, well, what does this actually look at like from a physical standpoint? What's cool about this is that the switch will show both a front and a back view so that you can visually have, or at least have a general visual identification of what it would look like if you were to be working on a switch in real life. So all of the ports at the very top right here, you can see these fast Ethernets, and you can see there's a total of 24 of them right here. These are your fast Ethernet ports. Then we also have these 2 ports right off to the very far right over here. These are your gigabit ports. And then, so this top section right here is what you'd see if you were looking at the front of the switch. And then we have this bottom section right here where you can see what is a power cable. And then you can also see the console port as well. So when I say that we're taking a console port and we're plugging it into the switch, we're plugging it into this interface of the actual switch itself. This console cable is not getting plugged into any of these other devices. So our goal here is that we're going to be managing and logging into this switch from that physical cable. So that's the goal here. So that light blue cable that we just plugged in, logically, it's plugged into this console port that would exist on the back of a switch. So if we take a look at how that actually works, we can open up the PC by just clicking on it, going over to desktop, and then how we actually would log into this would be through what's known as a terminal. Now, there's lots of different terminal tools out there. One of the common ones that's out there is called PuTTY, or a common tool called Solar PuTTY. So this is an example of one. It's a free tool. There's other tools out there. There's, say, like Terraterm that you can log into as well, or use as terminal emulation. There's lots of different things that are out there for kind of being able to gain access over this type of connection. So we'd select terminal, and then we can leave all the port configuration the same and just click OK. And what you'll see is a login screen with a large number of basically information that comes up. It's basically a terminal, no different than if I pulled up a command prompt, similar to what you're seeing right here. So this is our command prompt for the switch. Now, if I press enter, you can actually see that I'm getting a small caret and a prompt, which just says switch. We'll come back to kind of doing some basic configuration on the switch in a little bit, but this is an example of how we would physically connect into the switch to make changes to it. So let's say I wanted to remove a cable. to remove a cable, we can go up to the top left-hand corner and there's a delete option. We'll select it and then hover over the cable that you want to delete and click it, and it will be removed. Now, if I wanted to connect up our other different devices, we have multiple different types of cables that we can use. We're going to talk about two primary cables here really quickly. We're going to talk about copper straight through cables, which is Ethernet, and we're also going to talk about a copper crossover cable, which is also an Ethernet, but they're different types of Ethernet. I'm not going to go super in depth into it in this video. We'll talk about the differences between what exactly the differences are between a copper straight through and a copper crossover are in a later time. But for right now, we're going to talk about using this copper straight through cable. And so we'll click on that, and then we'll select our PC, select our fast Ethernet, go up to the switch, and then we can pick any of the fast Ethernets that we want, or gigabit, it doesn't matter at this time, so I'm just going to use fast Ethernet 01. I'm going to select my copper straight through again, select the switch, we'll use fast Ethernet 02, go up to the router, and plug it into gigabit 00. Now, the thing to note here, really quickly, I'm not going to really play around too much with these sections, is that you can see that one light is green, one light is orange, and I have two lights that are red. What's kind of cool, and you can see that that orange light goes green. So what's happening here is that our switch ports all start by default in what's known as an up and up state. So as soon as I plug a cable into them, as long as that switch has power, that port and the other end is also active as well, that light will go green. So it wants to start sending traffic. It wants to be able to send data. So it will try and go green as soon as we plug something into it. Now you can see the cable between the switch and the router has been plugged in, and both lights are red. Well, I just said switches start in an up and up state, or their ports do. Well, routers, however, their ports start in a administratively down state. So those ports will not come back online until I manually go in and turn that port on. So both sides are red because while the switch is ready to communicate, it will, since it recognizes that the opposite side is not open or turned on, it will not send data out of that interface until that light goes green. So if I wanted to make it go green, I'll just quickly go in, and for our port status here, I'll just turn the port on. And you can see that the light goes green, and the other side of it on the switch, the FAO2 port, is amber. Now, one other thing to kind of show really quickly is if I wanted to speed things up and not have to wait, in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a fast forward button. And if I click that, it will essentially fast forward the time of this workspace by about 15 to 30 seconds, depending on how I've set this up. So a couple other tips and tricks for using Packet Tracer. So you can see that I've hovered over, and now that I can see a couple of the interfaces, but I don't know what the interfaces are down below unless I go down and hover over them as well. It's kind of a pain. So one of the things that we can do is, if you go up to Options and Preferences, is underneath the Interface section, halfway down, there is a Always Show Port Labels and Logical Workspace option. I like to make sure that that button is checked. The other thing that we can do too is, if you don't like, say, the size of the font and it's too small for you, same thing, we can go up to Options, Preferences, go over to Font, and we, underneath the dialogues, the CLI, which stands for Command Line Interface, we can go over and we can increase the font size. We can also change the font itself, and we can click Apply. And so now, for all devices, that font size will be increased. So hopefully that gives a couple initial kind of tips and tricks of how Packet Tracer works. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into that first Packet Tracer assignment, which is 255 configure initial switch settings. So we'll go ahead and open this up. And what you'll see is it'll ask for resetting everything. What you'll see is an initial kind of topology that's been set up and a list of directions. So we have our directions list that are right here, and we have all of our packet tracer systems, kind of our working environment of what we have to make changes to. So what we're going to do is walk through these first couple steps, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what we're doing. So first and foremost, what you need to do is go to Canvas, download the packet tracer. This is what you're going to be working on. And then when we finish our packet tracer, we're going to save it, and then you will need to upload it back onto this section or underneath this assignment. So let's go back to our working environment and we'll kind of walk through it. So the first thing that we do is understand what it's kind of asking for us. So in our list of directions, a couple of things to kind of point out really quickly, and is there is a completion section right here, which tells you how much of the lab or assignment you've completed so far. So far, because I just opened it up, it is 0% complete. Now, if I get very stuck, I can also check results or click the check results button, and I can go to the assessment items tab. And what this will do is it will go over and it will tell me what still needs to be configured. If it's a red X, it means I've either not configured it or configured it incorrectly. And then what I'm attempting to do is to get it to turn to a green check mark, which means that I've completed it. And if I've completed it, then I get those points towards my total score. The goal is to finish all of this, get this up to 100%, and when we're done with it, save it and upload it back up to Canvas. So starting off, it wants us to open up switch 1. So we'll go to switch 1. It'll open up a new tab for me. And this is the working environment of the actual device. So when I'm currently working in this environment, my initial starting point is the user exec mode. I don't have very many configuration abilities in this mode, so in order to move into the privileged exec mode, we type in the command enable. Now, this gives me the different things I can do. So I can now, if I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what to type in, I can always hit the question mark button and it'll give me a list of the different commands that I can do. If I want to move back into the user exec mode, I can type exit and it'll put me back into the prior mode that I was in. And same thing, if I wanted to see a comparison between the commands, I can do a question mark here. I can go back into privilege exec mode and do a question mark again. And you can see that there are different sets of commands that I can do. So the important thing to know is when we're working with Cisco is that each run level gives us different abilities and different commands that we can do. So our user exec mode is just that. Think of it like user permissions. I don't want to give very much control over the actual device itself to someone that probably shouldn't be actually working on it. So they have very minimal ability to kind of test some basic functions and to be able to do some very basic items. But in the privilege exec, this is more for learning about the actual configuration of the device, what's been changed, how have things been changed, being able to save my configurations. Those are what we kind of see at that point. And then we have a following configuration, which is the configuration mode. So at this point, we can type in, if we wanted to move into even higher mode, we can type in configure terminal, but I'll get there in a sec. So if we wanted to view the current configuration, we'll type in show running -config. Now I just pressed tab, so you can see that I typed in show run and I press tab, and it will auto complete the rest of my command that I've typed up, as long as there's no other commands that start with that. So if I said just down to show R and press tab, again, because there's only one command that starts with R, it will just finish or autocomplete that command. So that's kind of the nice thing with Cisco is you can shorthand a lot of your commands. So you can just type in show R, or you could do say like show run, or you could do show running config, and then you can press the space bar to page through and see what the current commands or configurations are. So by default, there's no configurations. So moving on, and we want to kind of get into actually doing some basic configs and some changes to this device. So we're going to move into the global configuration mode by typing in configure terminal. And now again, same thing, if you wanted to do shorthand, so I could type in configure terminal, but if you wanted to do shorthand, which is fairly common, most people just type in conf t, and that'll put you into global configuration mode. Configure terminal works as well. So from here, we want to set a host name. So we'll say host name, and then S1, and then we'll from there we can now actually see that our prompt has changed. So our name of our device is no longer switch, which is the default. It's now S1. So then we're going to move into actually making some security changes to the actual device itself. So from here, we're going to go into the console port of which is how we're currently or how we can access this port or device. And we're going to put a password on it. So we'll say line console 0, which 0 stands for the interface that we're plugging into. And then we're going to set a password on it by typing in password and then let me in. And then we need to apply the password by typing in login. So without applying the password exists, but it's not going to be required to actually log into things. So now that I've typed that in, if I want to go back to say just the global configuration mode, that's one thing that I should have pointed out, is when we typed in line console 0, you can see it moved me forward into the actual interface. So where I'm putting this password is on the console 0 port. So if I wanted to go back to global configuration mode, we type exit. And now we want to check and see, okay, does it actually prompt me for a password? So if we type end, it'll take me all the way back. And we'll type exit one more time. And if I press enter, it should prompt me for a password, and it does. And our password should be let me in. Now, you'll also notice that when I typed in my password, it didn't show anything as I was typing it in. That is normal. It's not going to, that's a security function. It's not going to show you actually typing in your password or any of those kind of blurred out stars that you might see when you're typing in password in other areas. Just know that it is actually taking those keystrokes. So make sure that you type it in. So we'll go back into privilege exec mode and go back into global configuration mode. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set privileged mode access. So we set up a password on our user exec mode. Now we want to set up a password on the enable, so the privilege exec. So to do this, we're going to go more back into configure terminal, and we'll type in enable password. And they want us to use the password Cisco, just spelled all fancy like. So we'll say C1 $C0. And that is our password. And then we'll type, and then just to check results to make sure that it did what we wanted it. Oh, didn't like my password that I typed in. Might have mistyped. That was a distinct possibility. no, it wants it to change it at a later date, so that's okay, based off the directions. So everything is good there. So to test this, we'll say exit. We'll exit again. We'll type in our let me in password. We'll type in enable, and it should be our fancy Cisco that we just typed in, and it is. So yay, our password is set. Now the next thing that we're going to move into is we also want we want an encrypted password. So we'll go back to conf t, and we're going to say enable secret, and we're going to say it's a secret. Now this password, and what the difference is between secret and password is that secret will encrypt the password right out of the gate. So where the password command will just leave it in plain text, the secret will encrypt it slightly. So if we wanted to check, we can type in show run, and you can see that between the two, we have our enable secret, and you can see that it's all fancy and jarbled. And then we also have our enable password, and it's in plain text from based off of what we typed in. So we're going to go back into conf t, and we're going to go into, and now we're going to make sure that that plain text password is also encrypted. And we're going to use the command service password dash encryption. And we'll press enter. And I'll come back to it in just a little bit. But the next thing that we'll do is we're also going to place a banner message of the day. So we're going to say banner MOTD space, and then our little quote marks here. And we're going to type in the exact message that they want us to type in, which is this is a secure system. Authorized access only. And then we'll close it, our quotes here, and we'll press enter. And so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to type exit, and then we're going to save our configs. And we can save our configs by typing in copy running dash config startup dash config. Now another way to type up this in a shorthand form is just to say copy run start, and that works as well. And we'll just go ahead and save it, and then we'll do a show run, and we can see that our host name is set. We can see that we have service password encryption turned on. Our enable secret is nice and jarbled. Our enable password is no longer plain text and readable. And we can see our banner message of the day is now set. And then also underneath line con 0, we now have our password set as well. And it's also nice and encrypted for us. So that gives us kind of a general gist of what we need to do here. So moving on to kind of the next step, if we wanted to test and see, okay, did I do everything right? We can see that my completion set is at 50%. So we'll click check results, go to the assessment items, and we can see that we've completed everything on switch 1 to what they want us to do. So in the directions here now, they want us to do the exact same thing that we did in switch 1 over on switch 2. So I will leave that to you guys to kind of go through those methods. Now, next thing kind of go through really quickly is what do you do when you're finished? You'll want to go up to File and click Save As, and you'll want to save your packet tracer to a specific location. I would probably, based off our directions, I'd probably want to say something like T McEwen complete, and then your packet tracer, and then you'll upload this completed saved packet tracer back onto Canvas underneath the assignment where you downloaded it. If you have questions on anything as you go through this, please let me know. I'm happy to set up time to go through this one-on-one with people, or to set up kind of a group time for people as well, or just answer questions via email or on Discord if you need. All right. See ya.